Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a bit special, just for you, really. We're diving deep into the human mind. It's fascinating, sometimes confusing, but always amazing.
Exactly. Our mission basically is to cut through all the jargon and complexity. We want to give you a shortcut to understanding some key ideas from psychology, maybe spark some aha moments.
Yeah, using insights from a really great book packed with surprising facts and compelling stories. We promise to keep you hooked.
So we'll be looking at the big stuff, how our brains construct reality, why we act, well, irrationally sometimes, and, what actually makes us happy, drawing on lots of research and stories.
Okay, let's get into it. First up, the foundations. How the mind works day to day, often, behind the scenes. And the biggest question of all, maybe, the mind-body problem.
Oh, classic.
Right. How can thoughts, feelings, this immaterial stuff connect with our physical brain and body? It feels philosophical, but also really practical.
It absolutely is. And it's not new. Thinkers hundreds of years ago were wrestling with this.
Mhm.
There's a great story about Princess Elizabeth of Bohemia writing to Descartes, basically saying, look, how can something without substance actually move a body? It's hard to grasp.
And Leibniz, another philosopher, had that analogy, didn't he, about walking into a brain like a giant mill.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He said you'd see all the parts working, the gears turning, but you'd never actually see a perception or a thought, just the mechanics.
It's strange how that puzzle just lingers. Even some modern neuroscientists, after decades studying the physical brain.
They hit a wall sometimes. They look for consciousness in the tissue, the signals, and, well, some admit they can't find it, making them wonder if it's maybe beyond just biology.
Which leads us to what David Chalmers called the hard problem of consciousness.
Right. How does all that physical activity, neurons firing, chemical shifting, actually create the subjective feeling? The feeling of red or pain or joy.
It really does feel like magic sometimes.
The book uses a good analogy. A computer can play chess, all right? Super complex task. That alone kind of disproves older ideas about machines not being able to think complexly.
Yeah, it doesn't feel lonely if it loses or angry. At least we assume not.
Exactly. So what's missing? What's the secret ingredient for feeling? Is it just biology or something else? Still a huge question.
And speaking of how our minds work, a lot of it is actually automatic. It has to be.
Oh, absolutely. William James, one of the founders of psychology, he really emphasized this. He said, freeing up your mind from constantly deciding trivial things is key to having energy for, like, higher powers of thought.
He even called the person totally caught up in deciding whether to light a cigar or drink coffee a miserable human being.
Huh. A bit dramatic, maybe, but the point stands. If you're constantly deliberating the small stuff,
You've no bandwidth left for the important things. Makes total sense.
but it's super practical advice, even today. Automatic exercise routines, you actually do them. Regular sleep schedule. Therapists swear by it for insomnia.
Even writing, right? Setting that consistent time, it just flows better.
It's about building habits that let your conscious mind focus elsewhere.
So our minds are working automatically, but they're also actively building our reality, not just receiving it. Perception isn't just raw data coming in.
Precisely. There's sensation, the light hitting your retina, the sound waves hitting your ear. But then there's perception, your brain making meaning of it. Like hearing English words versus just noise if you don't speak the language. As Jerry Fodor said, you almost can't access the raw sounds of a language you know. Your brain instantly interprets.
And the Stroop effect shows this so clearly. Trying to name the ink color of the word BLUE written in red ink, it's surprisingly hard.
It is, because your brain automatically reads the word, and that interferes with naming the color. You can't easily switch off that reading process.
And apparently this has been used in some pretty clever ways, like identifying spies.
Yeah, it's a fascinating application. Imagine you suspect someone knows Russian but denies it. You show them Russian color words written in different ink colors. If they truly don't know Russian, naming the ink color is easy. But if they do know Russian, their brain will automatically process the meaning of the word, just like in the standard Stroop test, and they'll be slower. It reveals their hidden knowledge. Pretty smart.
Wow, that's kind of sneaky, but brilliant. And it's not just vision, right? Our hearing does similar tricks.
That's right. It's called the phonemic restoration effect. If a sound in a sentence is replaced by, say, a cough, like the eel was on the axle, but the Y sound in wheel is coughed over.
You'd probably still hear wheel, wouldn't you? And just think there was a cough happening at the same time.
Exactly. Your brain fills in the missing sound based on the context. It assumes wheel makes more sense there than eel.
So it's this constant dance between the messy, bottom-up input from our senses.
And the top-down processing from our brain, our expectations, our beliefs, our knowledge, making sense of it all.
Which explains why we can miss the extra E in Paris in the springtime, or misread things based on what's on our mind, like vacations versus vaccinations.
Our brains are efficient guessers, basically. Always trying to find the pattern.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. How do we learn? Behaviorism was a huge force here for a while.
Yeah, the core idea was simple. Focus only on what you can see behavior. Forget introspection. Forget fuzzy mental states. Just look at stimulus and response.
And the most famous, or infamous example is probably John Watson and Little Albert.
Right. The experiment where they conditioned a baby to fear a white rat by pairing it with a loud noise? Ethically. Well, I wouldn't fly today.
Definitely not.
But it powerfully demonstrated classical conditioning. Fun fact, though, Watson later got fired from academia after an affair and ended up in advertising.
No way.
Yep. And he used those same conditioning principles to help popularize things like the coffee break, associating coffee with the pleasant pause.
Huh. From Little Albert to coffee breaks, weird trajectory. But conditioning is used in therapy, like for phobias.
Absolutely. Systematic desensitization is a classic example. Gradually exposing someone to what they fear while keeping them relaxed. It works. Though the book has this funny story about a professor friend who feared heights.
Oh, yeah.
He moved to the 54th floor thinking, exposure therapy. But he confessed later he never once actually stepped out onto the balcony. So much for that plan.
Huh. Shows the limits, I guess. Then there was Skinner, right? Operant conditioning.
B.F. Skinner, yeah.
Yeah.
He focused on how consequences, reinforcement, and punishment shape behavior. He did those famous experiments with pigeons, leading to the idea of superstition in the pigeon.
What's that?
Well, if a pigeon just happened to turn clockwise right before food randomly appeared, it might start turning clockwise more often, thinking its action caused the food. It develops a little ritual.
Like a bowler doing a weird wiggle after a good shot.
Exactly. Believing the wiggle helped.
But behaviorism couldn't explain everything, could it? Especially complex things like language.
That was the big critique, particularly from Noam Chomsky. He argued that language isn't just learned responses. It's too creative, too generative for that.
He called language a mental organ, didn't he? Like we're biologically wired for it.
Yeah. And he used examples like colorless green ideas sleep furiously.
Right. Makes no sense, but you instantly know it's grammatically correct English.
It shows we have these underlying rules, independent of meaning. And the key is recursion.
Recursion. That's like putting things inside other things. Infinitely.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
You can embed phrases within phrases.
Yeah.
Bob thinks that Mary knows that. You can keep going. It allows for infinite sentences from finite rules.
So language is powerful. But can you think without language?
Oh, definitely. Animals clearly think and solve problems. Babies reason before they can talk. Even as adults, think about planning how to move a sofa up some stairs. You visualize it. You plan the movements often without putting it into words. Some spatial thinking is hard to verbalize.
So language reflects thought rather than creating it entirely.
That seems to be the consensus, mostly. Our words tend to map onto how we naturally carve up the world. We have words for rabbit, not usually for undetached rabbit part or top half of a rabbit.
Makes sense. And how do kids even learn words? It seems impossible.
It's amazing. They seem to do a kind of statistical analysis on the sounds they hear. Play them a stream like bidakoopadoodagalaboobidaku, and they'll pick out bidaku as a likely word because those syllables stick together reliably.
Wow. And then there's the gavagai problem.
Right, Kwan's thought experiment. Someone points to a rabbit and says, gavagai. How does the child know it means rabbit and not animal or lunch or look movement?
How do they know?
They seem to have built-in biases. They often assume a new word refers to the whole object, and usually at a basic level, rabbit, rather than the broader animal or the narrower Flemish giant rabbit.
So language reflects thought, but can it influence thought? The Horphian hypothesis.
Yeah, there's evidence for subtle influences. Like Russian speakers, who have distinct words for light blue, goluboy, and dark blue, kuridi, seem to be slightly better at discriminating shades of blue quickly. And language definitely helps with thinking about large, exact numbers. It's hard to keep track of 73 sheep without number words.
And Helen Keller's story is so powerful here.
Incredibly, she described her world before language as a kind of fog. But she clearly had a mind she could communicate, show affection, even play tricks. Language unlocked a new kind of thinking, but the mind was already there.
It's amazing. Okay, let's move into some more complex territory. are often irrational behavior, motivations, and well-being.
Yeah, humans are quirky. Rationality isn't always our strong suit,
The book mentions the A&W third pound burger story. That's hilarious.
isn't it? They launched a burger bigger than McDonald's Quarter Pounder, but it failed because people thought 1/3 was less than 1/4 because 3 is less than 4.
Oh my goodness. Basic fractions. It shows how easily perception trumps logic.
Exactly. It's not just marketing trivia. It's about how we often misjudge value based on framing.
Which ties into all sorts of cognitive biases, like the availability bias.
Right. We overestimate dramatic, easily recalled events, plane crashes, shark attacks, because they stick in our minds. And we underestimate common, less vivid risks, like dying in a car crash, even though they're statistically way more likely. Media coverage plays a big role.
And then there's confirmation bias, seeking out stuff that proves us right.
The soldier mindset, they call it. Defending your existing beliefs instead of exploring like a scout. If you love video games, you might be quick to dismiss studies about their negative effects. If you belong to one political tribe, you seek out news that confirms that tribe's views. We all do it to some extent.
It feels like this explains a lot about online echo chambers and even conspiracy theories.
It certainly contributes. Some theories are just wildly detached, but others are more like narratives people adopt because they fit their worldview, often with little personal cost to believing them.
So maybe rationality isn't about always being right or logical in a pure sense.
The book suggests reframing it. Rationality is about effectively achieving your goals. If your goal is staying dry in the rain, an umbrella is rational. If your goal is ecstatic rain dancing, maybe not so much. It depends on the objective.
That's a useful way to think about it. Okay, what about what drives us? Our appetites and motivations.
Well, it's more than just seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. There was this old survey from 1937. They asked people how much money they'd need to do unpleasant things, like swallow a live beetle.
Yikes, what did people say?
The amounts varied wildly, showing motivation is complex. It also brings up disgust.
Disgust, a powerful one.
Very. Some triggers seen universal feces, blood, rot, probably evolutionary protection. But a lot of it is learned. You might find fried rat meat disgusting, but others consider it a delicacy. The author mentions developing a lifelong aversion to ouzo after one bad night. It's that omnivore's dilemma, again, learning what's safe.
And then there's lust, obviously a big driver.
Definitely. Evolutionarily crucial. But there's fascinating counter effect. The Westermark effect.
Westermark. What's that?
It's the observation that people raised together in close proximity from a very young age, like siblings, typically don't develop sexual attraction to each other later on. And this holds true even if they aren't biologically related, like kids raised together in an Israeli kibbutz. They rarely marry each other. It's like early familiarity dampens later attraction.
Interesting. So despite all these complex drives, what do people actually want most in a partner across cultures?
You might guess looks, money, intelligence. But the #1 desired trait consistently across 37 cultures studied,
What is it?
kindness.
Kindness. That's actually really nice to hear.
It is, isn't it? Now, shifting towards mental health and well-being, there's a growing perspective called neurodiversity.
Right, viewing conditions like autism not just as disorders, but as different ways of processing information.
Exactly. Recognizing the strengths that can come with these differences. Autistic individuals, for instance, often excel in pattern recognition, detail-focused skills valuable in programming or science.
It's a move away from a purely deficit model. And important, too, is distinguishing between mental illness and, say, a normal reaction to tragedy.
Yes. Intense grief after losing a child, for example, shares symptoms with depression, but labeling it purely as an illness might miss the context. It's a profound human response.
When we do talk about conditions like schizophrenia, what are the key things?
The core symptoms often involve hallucinations, seeing or hearing things that aren't there, and delusions, which are firmly held false beliefs. A break from shared reality, essentially. There's a really poignant story about James Joyce and Carl Jung. Joyce's daughter, Lucia, had schizophrenia.
Oh, wow.
Jung was describing her fragmented thoughts and experiences, and Joyce remarked how similar they were to his own creative processes. Jung's reply was devastating. Yes, but where you swim, she drowns.
Oof, that's powerful. What about something like dissociative identity disorder, formerly multiple personalities?
That's a complex and debated one, traditionally linked strongly to severe early trauma. But some recent research suggests other factors might play a role, maybe predispositions related to sleep disturbances like sleep paralysis or vivid waking hallucinations. Some view it as perhaps a disorder of self-understanding. It's still being actively researched.
And therapy in general. Does it work?
On average, yes. People who get therapy tend to do better than those who don't. But why it works is still debated. Is it the specific technique, the therapist-patient relationship, the simple act of talking? Probably a mix of factors.
Okay, finally, let's talk happiness, the science of it.
One really interesting finding is the U-shaped curve of happiness over a lifetime.
U-shaped. How does that work?
People generally report being happiest in their early 20s, then there's often a dip in middle age, maybe career stress, family pressures, and then happiness tends to rise again in older age, like the late 70s and 80s.
Huh. Something to look forward to, maybe. What else influences our memory of happiness?
The peak end rule is huge. How we remember an experience isn't an average of every moment. It's disproportionately influenced by the most intense point, the peak, and how it finishes the end.
Like that colonoscopy study.
Exactly. Kahneman found patients preferred a slightly longer procedure if the last few minutes were less uncomfortable, even if the overall discomfort duration was greater. The less painful ending made the whole memory better.
That's bizarre, but makes sense. You want the embarrassing moment at the party to be early on, not the last thing that happens.
Precisely. Your memory latches onto that endpoint.
Is happiness just genetic, then? Some people are just born happier.
There's definitely a genetic component. Some people seem to have a higher baseline happiness level, born smiley, as the book puts it, while others are more grouchy by disposition. But it's not the whole story.
But trying too hard to be happy, that can backfire.
Yeah, that's the paradox. Studies suggest that people who place a very high value on achieving happiness can end up feeling more lonely and even depressed. It's like the pursuit itself creates pressure that undermines the goal.
So chasing it makes it run away. Weird.
It is counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the final thought is that unhappiness isn't just bad, it serves a purpose, like a fuel gauge warning light or physical pain telling you something's wrong. Unhappiness can motivate us to change things, to improve our situation, to strive. Constant bliss might lead to stagnation.
Wow. We've covered so much ground today, from consciousness itself to why we stumble over simple choices, what drives us, how we learn language, the mysteries of mental health, and the elusive nature of happiness.
It really shows the sheer breadth and depth of the human mind. And hopefully, exploring these ideas gives you some of those aha moments, a new lens to see yourself and others through.
Absolutely. These aren't just abstract concepts. They touch on the core of our daily experience.
The human mind. It's this incredible product of evolution, our culture, our unique lives. We're creatures of habit, prone to bias, capable of amazing connection, driven by forces we barely understand.
So the question we leave you with is, what new corner of your own mind, maybe sparked by something we talked about today, will you decide to explore next?